Hi everyone, Dreckie here, and today I am reviewing the SJCam SJ7 Star. The SJ7 Star is a real 4K action cam from SJCam that's been on the market for a little while now, but I haven't been able to review it until now. The SJ7 Star comes with a whole host of accessories, all of which are decent quality. Accessories between action cams are fairly standard, so we're going to just fast forward through this section. Note that all the important basics are included, such as sticky mounts, the handlebar mount, and some adapters. Build quality wise, the SJ7 is one of the nicer cameras I've handled. The two colored metal plates make the camera feel solid and look handsome. Opening and closing the battery door is tight, and even the waterproof case feels sturdier than most other cameras. The design and build of the camera is where the SJ7 stands out the most, as it feels like a more premium product than the other sub $150 action cams. Well, other than the Megia, which has a very similar premium feel. That alone may be enough to justify the significantly higher price tag over the Firefly, DJI, and Nikon cameras, but it may not be enough for everyone. Those cameras are still pretty solid, but they are all plastic, which makes them feel cheap in comparison. The touchscreen of the SJ7 Star is responsive and the user interface is refined. Tap the screen for menu, swipe left to change modes, or swipe down for playback. The menus are easy to navigate, and I like how the camera has both buttons and touch for navigation, which makes it easier to switch modes and settings when you're wearing gloves, or use the touchscreen if that's what you prefer. Daytime video is on par with other budget real 4K cameras. I can't honestly say that the SJ7 stands out from the other real 4K cams in any meaningful way. Color balance is largely the same, exposure is pretty similar, lens flare is well managed, and there's a lot of detail. That's not to say that the video from the SJ7 is bad. Not at all by any means, the SJ7 is fantastic. It's just that there isn't much that stands out from this one versus the other cameras in its price range. I found that my particular copy of the SJ7 tended to overexpose a little bit, and now that there's an exposure value adjustment, I have been able to tweak the camera to my personal preferences. Video from this camera is good or excellent depending on the situation, and it's what I've come to expect from a camera in this price range. I often use this cam as a baseline to compare other cameras. The best format that this camera offers is 1080p at 60 frames per second because it has stabilization, but it also has an unstabilized 1080p at 120 frames per second, 2.7K at 60 FPS, or real 4K at 30 FPS if any of those modes suit you more. All of the modes I tested had solid amounts of detail in good light at the default settings. Low light video from this camera is, again, on par with others in its price range. The camera is primarily a daylight shooter, as after the sun sets and it starts to get dark out, detail becomes smudged and eventually barely existent. Indoors, in good artificial light it's fine too, but when the lighting is dim and moody, expect your video to be dimmer and moodier. In order to understand when this camera works best, imagine yourself wearing fairly dark sunglasses. At the point of sunset where you feel uncomfortable wearing them and you need to take them off, that's about the camera's cutoff for filming ability, similar to most cameras in its price range. Thankfully, a few months back, SJCam added an auto low light mode, so you have the option to either prioritize frame rate or brightness. Audio, unfortunately, is the SJCam's weakest link. It's not that the audio is terrible, but side by side with competing cameras like the DJI T5e, it sounds muffled and muddy. There are options to set the audio from 50% to 100%, but that doesn't do much to clear up the muddiness. Voices are not as clear and bass is overemphasized. Here's what it sounds like.
So currently I'm shooting with the SJCam SJ7 Star in 1080p 60 mode. And so one of the things that I'm going to do is I'm going to drop into the forest up here, and I hope that there's no snow in the forest, so we can actually take a look at what it's like once we get into the darker lighting with the gyro sensor on.
So I guess we're gonna do the narration indoors back at my house, because it is raining a little bit too hard today to do that outside. So I guess we're gonna do the narration indoors back at my house, because it is raining a little bit too hard today to do that outside. Hey everyone, Dreckie here, and today we're doing a comparison between the Firefly 8S, the SJCam SJ7 Star, the DJI T5e, and the Xiaomi Mijia 4K action camera. Hey everyone, Dreckie here, and today we're doing a comparison between the Firefly 8S, the SJCam SJ7 Star, the DJI T5e, and the Xiaomi Mijia 4K action camera. I'm not sure if this has been fixed in a more recent hardware revision. It may have. I do have one of the earlier cameras that they released, but at least the camera does accept an external mic if you're unhappy with the audio in its default form. The SJ7 features gyro electronic image stabilization in 1080p 60 and 30 modes, and it has very good results. I have yet to use another budget camera that stabilizes the vibration of my quadcopter as smoothly as this one, except perhaps for the SJ6 Legend Air. The stabilization works well for bigger bumps and jostles too, and the lens correction is accurate, so there's very little distortion added by the stabilization. The 8S and the 7S are fairly close competitors on the handlebar of my bike, and again, there's very little meaningful difference between the two. Some of you may prefer the video from the SJ7, while some of you may prefer the video from the 8S. In the end, it seems to me like the biggest difference between the SJ7 Star is in terms of its user interface and build quality, but really beyond that, not much else stands out from the other real 4K cams in its price range. I can't fault the SJ7 for anything major, but I have a long history shooting with this camera, and I've seen it grow from a buggy firmware mess into a solid, well-refined product, and I can give major kudos to SJCam for standing behind their gear with regular firmware updates. If you find build quality important and you like timely updates, then get this camera over some of the other options. But if you can live with a plastic body and a less refined UI, the DJI T5e is a fine camera too. And there's also the Firefly 8S, which strikes a decent balance between all three. I do recommend watching the real 4K comparison video between the Firefly 8S, the SJ7 Star, the DJI T5e, and the Xiaomi Mijia 4K action camera in order to get an idea of what camera will work best for you. Thanks again for watching, and if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below.